Welcome to the Millennial and a Boomer Walk into a Coffee Bar podcast.
The very best podcast to get your life advice in the form of a grande caramel macchiato in a venti cup, 1/3 whole milk, 1/3 almond milk, 1/3 soy milk, double the amount of vanilla syrup, caramel wall in the cup, no caramel drizzle on top, upside down, of course, tall ice cup, whipped cream, rounded lid, one shot extra espresso, decaf, cinnamon sprinkled on the top, and for the name, that's David, spelled Dafydd, please.
Or to get your business, finance, and life support black coffee advice, I'm Dan, I'm a Boomer.
And I'm Chase, the Millennial. Thanks for joining us today. All right, welcome back to another episode of Boomer and a Millennial. And here we are with our coffee mugs.
Cheers.
Halfway cheers. Small problem. I started to set up the coffee, turned it on, walked in here to get ready, and realized that the coffee maker wasn't plugged in. So I can hear it brewing. At some point, I'll just wander out, grab coffee, and wander back in. But,
the Millennial is ill prepared. That's this is a remote broadcast podcast, and I've got coffee, and in fact I've already had a couple cups of coffee, but that's okay. So welcome. It's good to be back and yakking with you, Jace.
Yeah, well, we've got an exciting episode today. It was one of our most heated episodes. We kind of just touched on it, and here we are back at it for round two. Ding, ding, ding.
That's right. And before we get started, I just want all of our people that are watching the podcast on YouTube that if I position my head just right in front of this clock, I've got that angelic aura around me like a 5th century saint. So if there's any type of, conflict or millennial boomer conflict, I can just kind of position myself and give a big smile. How's that sound?
Saint Dan of coffee. I liked
right.
it.
Good. How about a joke to start us off?
Oh, I've got a doozy for us this week.
Oh,
I've got a good one.
You do.
If I had $1 for every time that boomers complain about millennials.
Yeah, we do it often.
I could probably fix the economy that they broke.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then I'll start complaining a little bit more, and you can pay off the national debt. How's that sound?
Oh boy. Well, today we are going to talk about some debt, loans and credit. And I love the notes that you put together. Were you spilling coffee over there?
No, I forgot to start the
other recording device.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
If I had $1 for every time a boomer messed up the recording,
we won't catch. Funny. There, we're good to go now. So anyway, go.
Yeah. So I love the notes that we had. The notes, you put the notes together as like the general start here. You got us our skeleton, if you will, and
right, the framework,
and it says opening. Chase diatribe here. In quotes, don't do it when referencing loans and credit.
There you go. I could read you like the room and know the audience and everything else. So we're going to talk about loans, and I'm going to talk about, how to process a loan, this and that. But I thought I'd give you the opportunity to say, after all we've been through the last probably 6 or 8 weeks on this podcast, why in the world would you get a loan? So the floor is yours.
Well, I've come up with 7, which 7 is the perfect number, which feels appropriate for St. Dan. And
yes, it is.
Here are my 7 reasons why using debt is pretty stupid. I've got 7 examples here. Number 1.
Wait. Are these millennial reasons, or are these good for application for any generation?
I think they're good for any generation.
Okay.
Looking, let me flip through them and just double check here. So some of them will be a little more angled towards millennials. And here we go. 1 is good for boomers. So we're good all around. We've got a Gen X one in here even. We're golden.
Oh, very nice.
Number one, why is debt so stupid? It's like paying for a cheeseburger in 2035. Imagine buying a cheeseburger today and getting billed for it in the next decade with interest. Suddenly,
That's
that
right.
$5 meal is costing you $42.99, and it's not even warm anymore. The good news is, if it's a McDonald's burger, it hasn't changed at all. It's still the
Yeah, it
same.
won't deteriorate one bit. That's okay. Well, that's a pretty good one. I like the analogy there.
All right. Number two, you're basically renting someone else's money.
Yeah.
It's like borrowing your neighbor's lawnmower and then paying them $10 every time you use it. Now you've mowed your lawn for 2 years, you still don't own the mower, and you don't have any grass left.
And you don't have any cash left either. So,
Yeah. Yeah. 0 for 2. All right. Here we go. Number three, interest is a sneaky subscription you didn't sign up for. Debt interest is like a bad Netflix subscription. You thought you were just borrowing a little, but suddenly it's auto renewing every month. And now you are stuck paying for it forever. The only problem is you don't have any cool shows to binge watch. Rough.
There's a lot for me to absorb there because that's kind of the modern. I get Netflix and I get the automatic sign on and annual re up on it, but
Yeah.
binge watch. Okay, it took a while to sink in, but that's a good one too.
Yeah. We'll get you there. Number four, you're robbing future you. Future you is gonna be so mad. Future you finally saved up for that dream vacation. But past you decided to swipe a credit card for a night out. And now future you can only afford a tent in your backyard.
I remember when you kids were little, we used to put the tent up in the backyard and go out there, but we'd run an extension cord, a TV, everything else back there. So, okay,
Yeah.
I like that one. The
All
future
right.
you and you're on a roll here.
All right. Number five, then. Let's keep on going. It's like getting a pet you can't afford to feed. Debt is like adopting a pet that literally eats your paycheck. At first, it's cute and manageable. Then it keeps growing, and the problem is it gets hungrier. Now it's a full-blown debt dinosaur eating 30% of your income. Little Flintstones analogy. I like that one.
Yeah, that one. And I would equate that to student loan debt, right? Actually, we had talked about someone that bought a big, super big car, and they paid on it for 20 years, or never mind, I don't know what I'm talking about. They paid on it for several years, and they still owed the same amount after several years.
Yeah. Oh, I do remember that. That was one of our first personal finance episodes. I remember that.
It was. And buying cars on anything on term is avoid it. So anyway,
It's
you're down to
crazy
your
town.
last one, I think.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Let's see. What am I on? Number six? Number six, you end up owning stuff you don't even like anymore.
Yep.
You ever take out a loan for something you just had to have, and now it's sitting in your closet collecting dust? Congratulations, you're still paying for that thing you stopped caring about 2 years ago.
Okay, you're on a roll, Mr. Millennial.
All right, well, let's close it out strong then.
Take us home.
I like this one. Number seven, debt collectors are like ninjas with phones. Debt collectors have this ninja-like ability to find you anywhere. They can sniff out your new number faster than your ex. You're on vacation, sipping some mojito, and bam! There they are, ruining your day with a friendly reminder about your car payment. Debt can be just like inviting a very clingy, very expensive guest into your life who just simply refuses to leave.
You know what the house guests and fish have in common? After 3 days, they both really begin to stink. I like the way you work that in because debt stinks. Loans stink. And so I think the bottom line right off the bat here, as I gave you the opportunity for the diatribe, was exhaust every other option before you get a loan. And we talked about setting a budget. We talked about savings. We talked about doing all these other things. And believe it or not, if you manage your money correctly, when it comes down to even buying a car, you can pay cash for that car. You don't need to put that on a loan. And I remember freaking out when car loans on, I didn't get one at 60 months. I thought there's some cars that don't even last 60 months. And so, you got to be very careful about loans and credit. A lot of times we tend to buy something that you can't afford with the money that you don't have. And so even before you consider getting a loan, don't get it. Do anything and everything you can before you go get that loan.
I'm
I
in
tell you,
Texas.
boom,
I should have brought a hanky and just kind of waved it around a little bit.
one of those cheerleader hankies that you just, um, boomers say it's part of life. Millennials say
we have options.
yeah. And when I was growing up, it was, hey, we're going to go get a loan. We're going to go buy a car. We're going to go do this. And when you think of it, a credit card is a loan. You're borrowing somebody else's money. You need a new laptop for school, you go get a loan. A new bike to get around, you get a loan. A trip to visit relatives, you get a loan. Bad, bad, bad.
Yeah, definitely. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking we got to have a few minutes later so I can go grab some coffee. Just keep talking. Keep it going, big boy. I'll be right back.
I got plenty to say while the millennial who actually failed operator error on plugging in the coffee. That's one of the basics of life is if you're going to run an electronic device, well, number one, you make sure it's plugged in. Number two, if it's not a plug-in, that you have batteries. So while Chase is around, I can bag on him. Is not around, I can bag on him a little bit. It will probably get cut from the podcast, but maybe he should have got a loan and got an extension cord or something to plug that coffee pot in. But I'm going to go a little bit, further in on
a few moments later
this until Chase shows up, and that is, I get if you have something that you need to plan to buy, I referenced a laptop for school or a bike to get around, save for it. The times that a loan may be necessary is for an unexpected expense, like a repair, a medical bill, or a home improvement. And I remember, I think it was August with you guys, Chase, your air conditioning went out, and it's $3,000 or $4,000 to get a new whole air conditioning system. That's not something you're going to tell your wife, hey, we're going to wait this out and we're going to save until we get money to go do it. That's one of those things that you may go get a loan and take that out and get it installed. But then you ought to do everything you possibly can to pay that off as fast as you possibly can, even to the extent where you don't have to pay any interest. We use a credit card for gas. And we charge our gas every single day during the month. But when that bill comes at the end of the month, we pay it off. Therefore, I am not using other people's money. I'm actually using a credit card, but I pay it off at the end of the month. So don't wait months or don't wait even years to pay off your debt. Get on it and budget into your budget and get on with it.
Yeah, I'll add a piece to that because what you're talking about is really interesting. There are certain things that are coming up, and those things should be built into your budget. And I've got a great example. Right. Well, with these things right here, right? I'm holding up my cell phone for those of you listening to the audio only version. Cell phones, eventually you're going to have another phone. So you have one of two options. You can either go down to the store and you pay them an extra $35 every month with your bill, and you, in essence, lease this phone from them, or you keep the phone you had that's hopefully paid off now because you've been paying your $35 lease for the last 4.5 years, right? Mm-hmm. And you start paying $35 a month into a savings account so that when your phone finally dies, now you have cash available to go and purchase this phone outright. Now, here's a great example. I do all kinds of crazy things, one of which I did recently. I rode my motorcycle from Texas to Florida, from Florida to California, and then from California back to Texas. there's a whole long story to this whole thing, but let me tell you, I got into the panhandle of Florida and it rained
Rain,
cats
rain, rain.
and dogs. I can only remember one other time driving a motorcycle in rain that heavy. It was actually right here in Texas. But this was like a very prolonged rain. I mean, it was the whole panhandle. And then I went to bed and my phone was acting a little weird, but whatever. Woke up the next morning, driving back out the panhandle the other direction, and it was so foggy and misty. I mean, I could have put my hands together like I was swimming through this
Really?
mist and pulled it. And that morning, all the moisture in the air finally it did my phone in. It finally just bricked out, completely not working again,
Oh,
in
wow.
Baton Rouge. So I went from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to San Diego, California, with no cell phone.
And no directions?
I
Oh,
didn't have
you
a
had you have
GPS.
a
I had a
GPS.
GPS.
Okay, gotcha.
And while it was very frustrating that my phone died, it wasn't a super old phone, but we had been saving up for new phones for my wife and I. And
Oh,
so when I
good.
got to San Diego, frustratingly, I went to the store to see if they could fix it. And they said, "No, I'm sorry, this one's done for." And I said, "Okay, well, I guess I need a new phone." So, I bought a new phone, and it was the wildest thing because if you would have told a decade ago, Chase, "Hey man, one day you're just gonna go on a crazy motorcycle ride, and then at the end you're gonna buy a brand new iPhone and just swipe your debit card," I would have been like, "Yeah, right. Those things are expensive." But we planned for it three
Yeah.
years ago when we bought this phone the first time, and here we are. Now we've got a brand new phone, and it was not a big issue
Yep.
because we had planned for it.
Yep. No, and that's the way you need to do it is don't wait months to pay back, work months to pay forward, I guess is the best way to say that. But I've got the boomer comment to your latest story because you were, hey, I was on the panhandle of Florida and it was raining cats and dogs. You didn't run over a poodle, did you?
Oh man, dad jokes for days.
Woohoo! Woohoo! Well, let's just say you have a position in life where you need to get a loan. I just want to talk a few options. Some of them are really okay. Some of them, none of them are okay, but some of them are better than others. So here's one. One option is to borrow money from someone else, like a family member, a friend, or a financial institution, right? Borrowing money is to go get it. This is called taking out a loan or using credit. Now, it's it's a slippery slope when you borrow from family. It's a slippery slope when you borrow from friends. It's even a slippery slope when you borrow from the bank. But just make sure that you understand you're going to pay back what you borrow, and you're going to pay more than what you borrowed, and that's called the interest that you're going to pay. Right? Just expect its costs to use someone else's money.
Yep. And that really went back to my point from earlier, right? Which one was it? Oh, the $5 cheeseburger, right? The interest makes it so you're actually paying $42.99. This really blew me away. When we bought our first house,
Yep.
I didn't know anything about buying houses at that point. And I think what was the purchase price on our first house ever? It was in Texas. This was back in 2008 and everything had crashed. 2009, I guess. And um, I think we paid $89,500 for our first house.
Yep, I remember.
89,500. But when I started going through the mortgage documents, I don't know, it was not a bad rate. I don't remember what the rate was, but it wasn't bad. Everyone was like, "Oh, that's actually a pretty good rate." Uh, the purchase price of the house was over $300,000 by the time I paid off the loan. And I'm like, wait a minute, the price just tripled by the time I pay this thing off? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But that's not what people look at. The mortgage companies, the loan nerds, all these people have gotten so good at not letting you look at the long-term impact, but just saying, "Oh, it's just this much every month. That's the only number
Yeah.
we want you to focus on. Just look, it's only, I think our mortgage was $823 a month back then." And
Yeah,
that's all we ever saw.
so when you go to get a loan, and we're going to talk about a couple of types of loans here real quick. When you do it, that's exactly what they say. Their focus is how much can you afford?
Yeah.
Well, I can't afford anything, but they say, well, how much can you afford every month? And then you go to your budget, and hopefully y'all have put a budget together with a budget number on housing or on automobile, and you say, well, I can afford this. And then they always squeeze you and say, well, could you afford, 1,500, or could you afford 2,500 instead of 2,200? And that extra $200 or $300, by the time you pay that on the term of your loan, it can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars just for things like that. So be aware. Best thing, don't get a loan. Best thing, if you do get a loan, is to really think it through and look at it. So what are some of the reasons? What are the purchases you would get a loan for?
Well, I'm going to answer that what you want me to answer, not what I would answer, because I wouldn't get a loan anymore, I don't think. It would be, I might get a loan for a house. And this goes back to our conversation on what's good debt versus bad debt. Anything that increases in value, it might make sense to get the loan. Anything that decreases in value, absolutely do not get a loan on that. So the first thing people get a loan for is to purchase a car.
Right.
And we've already talked about that. A car can cost a lot. Yeah, it can help get you around. But you pay for a car over time instead of paying all the money at once. Now, interesting. What's the purpose of a car? I just said it. It's to help get you around, right?
Point A to point B.
That's it.
And point B back to point A.
Usually.
But you can even figure that out.
Yeah. There are alternate ways of getting around. And depending on where you live in the world, they're more prevalent than others. But I was reading an article about someone who moved from the US to Europe, where there's beautiful public transit everywhere. And it was a college student. She paid 396 euros for an annual pass that got her on any train anywhere. That's less than one car payment that some people make here in the US. Exactly. And that got her around all year round. Now, you transition and go to, okay, let's look over in Southeast Asia. You can pick up one of those little Kimco scooters for like $1,500, and that'll get you anywhere you need to go. And you're going to have a whole lot more fun in it than you will in a car.
I don't know about that, but
you might die, but you're going to have a lot of fun doing it.
That's right. That's exactly right. So paying a car and a couple other things that people do is buying a house. A house is certainly a lot more than let me go back to the car. I got one other point. People think they need to get the newest, greatest, most expensive car. If you need a car to get around, consider a used car. Like you said, the minute you drive a brand new car off of the lot, it's depreciated somewhere 20-25% right off the bat, right? Yep. So consider establishing a little lower threshold of hey, I got to have brand new. Your car does not define you, just like your job doesn't define you, just doesn't all these other things. So anyway, buying a house can even cost more money. It can be a good investment as long as you take care of it and it provides a place to live. Most people there get a mortgage from a bank or a credit union, a mortgage company, and they buy their house over time instead of paying all at once. Now, you have done both, right? You've done over time and you've paid for a house all at one time. Which one is better for you and your wife? Because I've talked to her 100 times, and she says we are so blessed to be able to afford to buy a house all at one time.
Yeah. Let me tell you, when you go through the process, the closing process with a loan versus when you pay cash, it's about 1/10 of the amount of time and maybe 1/20th of the number of papers that you have to sign when you just pay cash for your house. Now, I didn't just like wake up one morning and win the lotto and decide to pay my house off or to pay cash for a house. What we did with a couple of our houses is, our monthly mortgage on one was, I think, $1,200, our second house that we purchased, but we were putting $1,500 every month toward our mortgage. Right. And so we were actually on track to pay it off sooner so that when we sold that house, we had more equity. Which translates into the amount of money you sell your house for, then you pay off your mortgage, then you get whatever's left over after all the realtor fees. And so by doing that and paying an extra $300 a month, we were setting aside money for our future selves to utilize in the next house. And then we had a bigger amount of money for our down payment on the next house, which lowered our monthly payment for our mortgage. And so our next monthly mortgage, I think, was $1,500 a month for a much bigger house. And we did the same thing. Now we're paying $2,000 a month because now, from a financial standpoint, we've put a budget in place. We've paid off all of our debt. Like, we've done all these things. And so now we're putting an extra $500 a month towards our mortgage. And then we sold that house. And between selling our house, putting extra in, and the market going nuts there for a little while, then we had enough money left over after paying our mortgage and our realtor fees off, that we went and said, okay, instead of getting another bigger house, let's go get a smaller house, pay cash, and be done with it.
Yeah.
And so now, instead of
work on that house.
Yeah. Now we don't have $1,500 or $2,000 going out of our account every month. Now we get to utilize that money in other ways.
So there's two ways you can handle that, right? You could do exactly what you did, pay an extra $300 a month, extra $500 a month, or you could just pay your mortgage and you could put that $300 or $500 in the bank, or now in this particular case, it grew leaps and bounds further because of the market. And so consider that, what the future is going to look like. Consider what your house is like. Consider a lot of things of where that money is going to go. If you're going to buy a car and you buy a car on time, you can even pay extra money on that car loan, and I would suggest you do, but it's not going to be in a position that the next time you can pay cash for a car, because you're not going to get that money out of the car. The car depreciates so fast. So anyway, good news. That's a good story. I like that story, and it's a pretty successful story. The other thing that I think people use money to borrow for, and it's all over the news right now, and I've got a very strong boomer position on this one, but is to get an education. School can help you learn new things. School can help you get a better job or get ready for a job sometimes, but even trade schools and trades and things like that. But it can also be very expensive, especially at a college or university, especially when there's people that make a lot of money on student loans that don't have any interest in your education whatsoever. They're in it for making money. So they get student loans from private industries. They get student loans from the government or private lenders, or private school, living costs. You can use it anywhere you want, but you have to pay it back. Asterisk, footnote. Unless you're waiting for the government to give you loan forgiveness. Now, I did go get a student loan, and my wife and I paid on my student loan for 7 years. We paid every month, and it was very, very low interest rate, and I got a good job in education and everything else. But I paid for 7 years, and I remember the day that we paid that note off. And my wife and I were like, well, now you're, 7 years into your career and you're only paying off your education. But these people that are expecting loan forgiveness on education, on cars, on houses, on mortgages, when you take out a loan, you should be responsible to pay that back. Now, for all these student loan forgiveness, I want my money back. I want someone to give me student payment back forgiveness, and here, have a bonus. So it's one of those things that is in the news, and it's kind of unusual. I don't know. You have an opinion on student loans?
Oh, have I got an opinion on student loans? I don't like loans anyway, and you shouldn't have taken the loan out. So I got a story, and then a couple of examples real quick. And I know this was not in the notes. This is fresh for you.
This is free.
Okay. Just like a house can be a good investment, a house can also be a bad investment. And the example I give is the very first house we bought, the one that was $89,500, was the very best house we could afford at the time. But what I should have done is not purchase the house, because that house, due to the market and the location and just a lot of different variables, actually lost money. So when I sold that house, I lost a ton of money. And I know we've talked about that before, but it's the same thing with college. You can go to college and get something that's beneficial and will in turn make you more money over time. Or you can go to college and do some really dumb, boneheaded things and lose money. So it actually becomes a bad investment. And I know as the educator, I get a lot of flack for saying stuff like this all the time, but you should not go to college and make a bad investment in your major. So I've got a couple of examples. Here's a list of college degrees that will cost you a fortune, but don't necessarily always pay the bills. Number 1, philosophy. You spend $100,000 to ask questions like, what is the meaning of life? Spoiler, the answer is not unpaid internships. And when you're deep in debt, you definitely have to start questioning your existence. Number 2, art history. Imagine paying $50,000 a year to analyze these paintings, only to end up working in a museum gift shop, but at least you can tell people about the deeper meaning behind the overpriced postcards you're ringing up. Number 3, music composition. Sure, you'll learn how to compose a symphony, but unless your side hustle is writing the next Baby Shark, do, you'll be composing songs about how hungry you are because you're too broke to buy lunch. Number 4, creative writing. You're going to craft beautiful, inspiring short stories that no one buys. Meanwhile, you're writing novels in your head about how to pay rent by selling your prized book collection to fund your career as a starving artist. Man, I'm on a roll today. I'm losing people. We're losing people left and right. Number 5, theater.
You've lost 5 types of people so far, so keep going.
Number 5, theater. You'll spend 4 years learning Shakespeare, but real-world jobs for actors are either waiting tables or actually waiting for your big break while performing in a coffee shop production of Macbeth for $5 a show. Oh man, let's just keep going with the film studies. Number 6, film studies. You love movies so much, you spent $80,000 learning all about them. And now you work at a movie theater. But hey, at least you get to watch all the movies for free. Popcorn is included. And finally, number 7, dance. You'll have pirouettes down to perfection, but good luck dancing your way out of student loans when the only rhythm in your life is the cha-ching of bills coming in. You gotta be smart with the majors that you pick and make sure that the jobs on the other end of that major can pay off the investment that you made into it.
You know, it's funny, and I'm just going to say it, and we're probably going to lose a lot of people, but the boomers will really like it, is every one of those jobs that you listed are usually millennial jobs or Gen X jobs. We didn't have a lot of those when I was growing up. What we had was, and I went to college with some guys, and I was friends with them, and they got student loans, and then they either bought a car with it or dropped out of school and ended up struggling to pay that back, and they didn't spend it on their education, and they should never have done that. So I'll say this too, there's been a lot of people that have paid for education. In fact, my student loans, I didn't have a lot of student loans because I worked and paid that off. My folks helped me out and everything else, but there were times when I needed to have some help. So you too can help pay your school up front without a loan. Plan on it. And you as parents, that millennials and Gen Xers are just, Gen Ys are starting to come, Gen Zs, whatever they are, consider putting a education fund for your kids. Make things happen that you don't have to go out and get a crappy degree on credit. You can get a good degree up front. So, and then we're running out of time, but there's one last thing I wanted to do that would be considered to go for a loan, and that's emergencies. Sometimes bad things happen that you can't control, and you can't avoid those things, like a storm, a sickness, a legal problem, a family problem. These things are reasons that help us or result in us spending money that we don't have. And at that particular time, if you do have to get a loan, think right now how you're going to pay that back, what side hustle I can get, what I'm going to do in order to make that as least of an impact on my financial statement as possible.
And per one of our earlier conversations, have an emergency fund so you don't have to put that on loan. Yeah.
Way to bring that one in too. That's a good one. So the one that drives me crazy is the perception it's an emergency.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, they want fast money to deal with their problems. and the problems took months, weeks, years to create, and they want to go get a loan to deal with that as fast as possible, and that's a problem. So anyway, Chase, I like the top 7. I like your top 7. We gave you an opportunity to tell us how you really feel about education and money and loans and stuff like that. But I think we need to sign this off. And then I think what we're going to do next podcast is talk a little bit about interest and what that means, and exactly open your eyes to what payback looks like instead of just borrowing the base amount, add on to it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Interest is good stuff.
Yep.
All right. Well, don't forget, just because it's different
does not mean it's wrong. Have a wonderful day.
See you next week.
Bye.